Hey distinction students, English with a perfect tutor, Mr. Gilbert CJ. So we are looking at composition writing, and in this video we are going to look at the narrative composition. Okay, before we look at the narrative composition, I want to give you some of the hints that you need to use or that you need to consider as you are writing your composition during the exam. So we are going to look at some of the hints on writing a good composition. Firstly, understand the question. This is very important. Composition comes in paper 1 of your exams. Paper 1 has got two sections, section A and section B. So in section A, you will have about 6 questions, of which you will just be required to choose one. Section B only has 1 question and it is compulsory. So let me talk about section A. Before you start writing, read through all the questions and understand them. After that, choose a question you're comfortable with, a question where you have vast knowledge about, where you can write ideas, many ideas. Don't choose a question where you can run out of points. So understanding the question is very important. Know what you are expected to write. What do they want here? If you miss this step, then you miss the whole composition and you lose marks, Secondly, use advanced but clear language. Avoid vulgar terms. Advanced but clear language. It should be advanced, but it should be clear. Avoid bombastic words. Paucritudinous. In the exam, you write paucritudinous. So you are giving the examiner the job of looking for a dictionary so that they search or they see what you mean by writing that word there. So you need to be clear as you are writing your composition. Avoid using bombastic words to show the examiners that you have studied the dictionary. No, it's not necessary. Just write clear language, clear words, straight on the point, just like that. Then pay attention to spellings, punctuations, and capital letters. This is very important. These are the key things of every composition: spellings, punctuations, and capital letters. So make sure you spell each and every word correctly, punctuate all the sentences, and use capital letters where you are expected to use capital letters. Write in indented paragraphs. Your composition must be written in indented paragraphs. You know what I mean by indenting? You leave a gap, or let me say a space, between the imaginary line and the first word of the first statement or sentence. You leave a space. That space, that's what we call indenting. You leave a space. Paragraphs. And the paragraph should be 5 to 6 lines long. 5 to 6 lines long, you cut. Start another one. Avoid using abbreviations and figures. Abbreviations, ZCC, ZNBC. No, write everything in full. If you want to use abbreviations, then you should use them after you write everything in full. For example, you want to write Zambia National Corporation something. Let me say Zambia National Corporation, just like that. Zambia National Corporation, ZNC. So after you write Zambia National Corporation, then you put ZNC in brackets at the end of that statement. Zambia National Corporation in brackets ZNC. Do not just put ZNC. No. Then do not use figures. Do not use figures. By figures, we mean you start putting 1, 2, 3 in numbers. No. Write 1, O-N-E. Should write like that. Observe the word length. Observe the word length, or the word limit, we can call it. 250 to 350 words. 1 page and a half. 1 page and a half. You need to write a page and a half. 250 to 350 words. Avoid contractions such as can't, don't. No, write these words in full. Cannot, do not. Use variety of sentence structures and connecting words. Your composition must be interesting, so use connecting words. Additionally, in conclusion, firstly, having said so, those words. So use connecting words to make your composition interesting. Here you are supposed to grab the reader's interest. Always explain your points clearly. Do not leave the examiner in suspense. What does this person mean here? No, do not leave the examiner in suspense. Explain everything clearly. Avoid presenting indirect information, e.g., she's my grandmother's daughter. She's my grandmother's daughter in a composition. Say she's my aunt. Simple as that. She's your aunt. She's my grandmother's daughter. In composition, this is prohibited. Use direct information, direct sentences, straight on point. So let us now look at some of the features of a good composition. Features of a good composition. Every composition, firstly, it must have a title. Before we go to the introduction, a composition must have a title on top. And remember, for the title, when you write it in capital letters, you don't need to underline. When you write it in small letters, you need to underline. So a composition must have a title. After you write the title, you go to the introduction. In the introduction, you are only here to attract the interest of the reader, the interest of that person who is reading your composition. Briefly and strikingly introduce your composition. You introduce it. You can start with a quotation. You can start by defining some of the keywords, like that. The introduction should be interesting, otherwise this is the key. This is the key of every composition. If things are messed up in the introduction, then the whole composition won't be interesting. That's how it is. In the main body, after you write the introduction, an interesting introduction, then you go to the main body. In the main body, explain the points in detail. Use paragraphs. Explain the points in detail now. Then the conclusion. In the conclusion, you restate the main points of your composition. Choose the main points. Summarize everything. For stories, end with the last event or a quote connected to what you're writing about. So, two things are very important here: the introduction and the conclusion. So make sure the introduction is interesting, the conclusion is on point, is striking, because mostly examiners do not read the whole composition. They will just read the introduction and they'll consider the spellings, the punctuations, everything. Then they'll go to the conclusion and they'll give you the marks. That's what it is. So you need to be very careful here. The conclusion. Restate the main points. If you are writing a story, end it properly, end it nicely. End it nicely. Bring out the whole story. Now, let us look at one type of composition, the first one. This is the simplest type of composition, narrative composition. It's the simplest. To narrate is to give an account of something. So this is a composition that requires one to write a story on a given heading. You write a story. Follow the order of events. Follow the order of events. Not he died, then he was hit by a car, Mm, what are you talking about? So follow the order of events. How did these things happen? Follow all the rules described earlier. For this one, you'll be given a title. You just come up with a story. Now, the only things they consider here are those I explained earlier. The punctuations, the capital letters, the spellings, and all those. So you need to be very careful with those things. So follow all the rules. Now, this type of conversation is simple. It is done just like that. I'll give you an example so that you see how to do it. So just know that the narrative composition is based on telling a story. It is just based on telling a story. So let us look at an example. The question says, write a story with the title Love is Blind. This is how questions come during the exam. They will just say, write a story with the title Love is Blind. So here, they don't mean you just be saying love is blind, love is blind, love is blind, hence love is blind. Furthermore, hence moreover, love is blind. No. Come up with a story that should be based on this title, Love is Blind. A story must be based on this same title. So look at the example here. Look at the solution now. Love is blind. You write the title, Love is Blind. So if this was written in small letters, I would have underlined. Now it is in capital letters, I don't need to underline. Now see the introduction. There was once a lady called Nomsa who had a friend called Brian. They have been friends for so long and became fond of each other. The introduction continues. See the way it has started here. So it will attract the reader's interest, trying to know what happened after these people became fond of each other. You see? This is the introduction. It is a story. So I've started telling you a story. Okay, there was once a lady called Nomsa. Had a friend called Brian. So as the reader, you try to know what happened to these two now. This is how you introduce your composition. This doesn't mean this is the only way you can introduce a composition. No, there are many ways of killing a write. You can start it in any way as long as you are attracting the interest of the reader. Simple. The introduction continues like that. For the main body, just sampled this. Nomsa and Brian got married and they were very excited about it. Unfortunately, barely 6 months of being married, blah 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 blah. You see, this is my main body. I'm explaining a story here. I'm explaining what happened to these two people. The most important thing, the conclusion. Look at the conclusion here. Brian then left Nomsa so miserable. He got almost all her property. If only she paid attention to what people had said about Brian, she would not have found herself in this position. Sometimes people fall in love so much that they cannot even pay attention to their partner's traits. Hence, love is what? Blind. You fall in love with someone such that you can't even pay attention to their traits. You don't even know. Maybe that person is a thief or is a robber. So, this is how you should tell a story. And as you can see in the conclusion here, I'm trying to connect my composition to the given title, the heading, Love is Blind. So this is where you sum up. You need to make sure that your composition is well connected. Practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect. Get a story, start reading, see how words are used, see how they punctuate statements, and get a heading. Now on your own, get a heading. Try to write a story before I even give you an assignment. Just try to write a story on your own. That has been a perfect tutor, Mr. Gilbert. See you in the next video.